taking some landscape shots here so I don't get pigeonholed as a bird photographer.
Are you ready to take your bird photography to the next level, to new heights, some might say? We've covered the gear and how I use multiple systems to actually get closer to bird wildlife, and also we covered basic settings for photographing birds in both urban environments and in beautiful Acadia. But now we're gonna take things up a notch. Matt with B&H here, and in this episode, we're gonna talk about some advanced photography techniques for photographing birds. We'll cover the settings for photographing birds in flight, and we'll also cover some unique techniques to get even more interesting images. If you guys are ready, let's go find some birds. No one ever said bird photography was going to be easy. Sometimes you're gonna spend hours out in nature and it's gonna be very early if you're waking up for sunrise, but that doesn't really matter because the more times you show up, the better off you're going to be in bird photography. Sometimes you might not walk away with an image, but that's okay because it's not just about the photographs themselves, but the entire experience around it. One of the most exciting parts about bird photography is that the birds are so unique, from species to species and their behaviors, that you know that you're always getting a unique image with the birds that you're photographing. And they're always going to be in different light, a different setting, and a different background, and hey, even a different angle. And in this episode, we're going to also talk about unique perspectives and ways that you can photograph birds a little bit differently so that you can walk away with some interesting images. In advanced bird photography, one of the most important settings aspects that you kind of want to master right off the bat is going to be capturing birds in flight. We talked about some of the basic settings already. You want to have your aperture wide open if you're shooting in low light, or if you just want to isolate that bird from the background. You want to have your ISO as low as possible, or even using auto ISO to make sure that you're getting that faster result of an image. For your shutter speed, you want to at least double your focal length. So if you're shooting at 300 mil, then at least be shooting at 600th of a second on your shutter. However, starting around 12/50th of a second will give you even better results if you have a very fast bird. A good example is this morning, actually. I have always wanted to photograph peregrine falcons, and we had the unique opportunity to actually see them this morning. And though they were pretty far away, I was able to get relatively close by using a 2x teleconverter matched with the 150 to 400 M Zuiko lens. And then that put that at an 800 millimeter equivalent. So I think I walked away with some great results. I had my shutter speed around 3200th of a second. Why is that? These are peregrine falcons. I don't know if you know this, but they can dive at 240 miles per hour is what they've been recorded diving at. And they can get up to around 50 miles per hour at horizontal speed. So these are very fast birds. So 3200th of a second was a safe bet when it came to my shutter speed. And I was shooting wide open because of it, and because I was using a teleconverter, it reduced the light as well. One big tip is especially to consider your background. This is what really sets apart advanced bird photography, because it can be a little bit easier to just get a simple photo of a bird. You know, when you're first getting started, you're just trying to capture every bird that you see, and that's a huge part of it. But once you get more advanced, consider your background. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you're photographing a bird, consider what exactly is behind the bird.
So this loon just swam right past a set of chairs in the background. And all we're gonna do is switch our angle up just a little bit to instead get the grass in the background rather than people's chairs, because I love Adirondack chairs, but not in my photos.
Rotate to your left or right, just changing your angle in general to incorporate a better background. What does a better background look like? I think you'll know when you'll see it. Overall, it just looks more soft and pleasing to the eye. This especially goes for if you have something man-made in the background, like a building or maybe even a fence of some sort, then try switching your angle up to get a little bit of a better background. Another major thing to consider when photographing birds is try to get eye level with them. You don't really want to be looking down on a bird. Sometimes you inevitably will be looking up at a bird, so getting eye level with a bird that's high in the tree is going to be a little difficult, because unless you have the unique ability to fly, I'm just not seeing that in your future. So let's say, for example, you're photographing a bird on a lake. this is a perfect opportunity to get as low and as close to the water as possible so that it looks like you're right there with the bird. And it brings you closer to the bird. It brings the viewers closer to the bird as well. And instead of you capturing it from a high angle where it looks like maybe you're capturing it in a zoo of some sort, it's much better to get eye level, get as low as possible, and be right there with that bird. Next, and this is a major one, incorporate foreground into your bird photography. It's the same thing with other forms of photography, portrait, landscape, and especially with bird photography. Incorporate foreground, like whether it be grass, leaves, even trees, into your shot. Why is that? It helps to add so much depth and interest, and it can also show the environment around you by incorporating the foreground. Another reason to use foreground is it helps to frame your subject, so the bird in this case. If I have a bunch of leaves around the bird, that helps to draw the viewer's attention directly to the bird. We actually just spotted some owls over here, and one of the things that I'm using when photographing these owls is I'm shifting my perspective. I'm trying to get one photograph immediately, just so that I know that I have a photograph to work with, and then I'll try and incorporate some foreground, which I'm using the leaves here to help frame and draw the viewers in directly to the owl.
It's sitting on a stick. Just looks perfect right now. All we need is for it to turn its head around so we can get the perfect photo. So I'm just gonna wait here for a moment. But this is a perfect scenario where including that foreground just adds so much more depth to that photo. There it is. Perfect.
All right, we're spending a lot of time on boats this week because there's so many wonderful birds off the coast of Maine. And for that reason, we're hopping on boats and getting out there pretty much every single day. And I'm definitely enjoying it, although I'm getting a little seasick here and there. But you know what? I've been fine, no complaints, because we're seeing puffins out here. So on the boat, I'm not using a tripod because a boat is going to be rocking back and forth. So to compensate that with a tripod of any sort would be way too difficult and pretty impractical. That's where the amazing image stabilization of this camera comes in. 8.5 stops of IS, and I'm definitely seeing it shine on the boat scenes where I'm photographing a puffin, a bald eagle, even an osprey, and even an Arctic tern. And I've been able to pan with the bird and catch it because of that amazing image stabilization. So that just goes to show, if you can and you're shooting bird photography, opt for a camera with image stabilization and toggle that on if you're shooting handheld, because that's going to save you in moments where you're panning with a bird, you're capturing birds in flight, and if you're on a boat. One of the many fantastic things about OM system cameras is they have these fantastic computational photography modes. And one that I particularly like amongst many others is the high-res shot. It's basically a way to move the sensor, so the camera will actually move the sensor around and blend a bunch of images together in order to make a very high resolution final result. So if you're shooting handheld, it can blend a bunch of frames together and get you a 50 megapixel photo. And if you're on a tripod, you can get up to an 80 megapixel photo. This is very impressive for a sensor of this size. And for bird photography, that's fantastic, because the better the resolution, maybe I could take that into the printing house, and then I could do a little bit of post cropping as well if I wanted to, because I have the extra room with those megapixels. Yes, the bird has to be somewhat still, otherwise it won't be able to properly blend those photos, but I've definitely been getting some good results. The best part about that is it still gives me that raw file as an output, and it blends all together for me, but I could still make all of the raw adjustments that we all love when it comes to shooting bird photography and having that full raw photo. If you don't have an OM system camera or a camera that has a function like high-res shot, you can always take a bunch of photos and merge those together or stack those together in a software like Photoshop. We had a ton of fun photographing birds. We started in an urban environment, New York City that is, and then we made it all the way to beautiful Acadia, Maine, here in the wilderness, to photograph some incredible, incredible birds. And I'm not gonna lie to you, each morning I was saying, I would love to see peregrine falcons today. That would be like the top of my list. Or I would love to get up nice and close with Atlantic puffins and get a nice photo of them. Each morning I was saying that, and all the dreams seem to come true throughout this series. So I'm so stoked. There was just so much that we saw this week. But wait, there's even more, because in this next episode, we're gonna talk about post-processing. I can't wait to see these photos, super stoked. I'm gonna pick about 4. I might just print one as well. And we're gonna talk about the printing process and how I actually back up my photos, which is so crucial. We wanna make sure that we don't lose any of our incredible bird photos. So there's more to see, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.